All right, people, here we are. It's December. We officially only have my calendar. I can't do math, so we're going to say 3.5 weeks left of the year of 2025. And oh man, Luke, you want to talk about saving all of the Hollywood saving all of its chips for the last month of the year. Oh man. I mean, don't get me wrong. It also helps that we have the beginning of the final stretch of Lost season 3. And to say that these final 4 episodes, because it doesn't just include this episode, the final 4 episodes might be the most important stretch of Lost of the entire show is an understatement, because after having finished Lost Back to the Island, the official Lost recap book, I will say that literally, like I said, after Stranger into Strangeland, Lindelof and Cuse were struggling. They were really, really trying to figure out, okay, we need to come up with a suitable ending for the show. But the other problem, too, that was happening around this point in season 3, ratings were dropping. They were losing viewers week by week. Like I said, they were having a little bit of a good stretch leading up to Man from Tallahassee, but everything after that, man, people were starting to tune out. People were being like, we get it. We've seen the shtick. We've seen all there is to see. You're just gonna keep, ironically, pulling a Walking Dead, which hadn't even happened yet. I'm just using that in hindsight with the context of collective TV history that we have now. And, you're just going to keep stringing us along to give us an answer that may or may not satisfy us. So they were like, all right, we got to pull out all the stops. We got to get things ready for the end game, if you will. And this truly is the beginning of the end, because, oh man, this episode starts and it does not stop. Season 3, episode 19, The Brig, or as it should have been called, they saved this title for the season 4 premiere, probably rightfully so, the beginning of the end. This is the beginning of the end, paying off on all those insane cliffhangers that were set up right after Man from Tallahassee. Man, it would have been cool if we had gotten this episode right after Man from Tallahassee, and in the age of streaming, that's absolutely what would have happened. But in 2007, when this season was airing, I'm actually really, really glad that didn't happen. Oh, man. So before we even start to break this down, going into this episode, after with the collective knowledge now of the last couple weeks, we're slowly getting strung along. Juliet's back with the beach survivors, but is also revealed to be a mole for Ben, or is she? Desmond, Charlie, Hurley, and Jin discovered Naomi and now know about the existence of the freighter. We also had his son gonna die because of her pregnancy last week, which was like the last in like the Arrow 1 Lost episodes that I will say before these next 4 kind of cue us up for the second phase. So going into this, like, what were you expecting?
I guess I was expecting we had kind of like, not really a filler, but like a not super fast-paced barreling towards some sort of answer with the last episode with Son and Juliet going on their pregnancy adventure thing. So, but then this episode, I already like reading the 1-sentence description on Disney Plus. I'm like, okay, there's something more to this than what it alludes. Like Locke asks Sawyer to come kill Ben. I'm like, okay, there's more to that.
Yeah.
And then I started watching the episode. Of course, I see the credits written by Lindelof and Cuse. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be one of the upper tier episodes. So, and then I think this culminates in like everything that Lost does, just to its best ability. Like the connections, they don't feel like pulled out of nowhere. Like you think back and you're like, okay, how did I not put 2 and 2 together? And it's also just the strength of TV as a medium, people talking in rooms. Like half the episode is just them in the ship, just like dialogue. So, and then on the other side, it's the sort of main plot of the getting off the island. So, again, just a masterful piece of TV.
What this episode is it is finally taking at least some of the many, 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 many strings that have been set up and finally tying them together. We're like, okay, we know that Sawyer's whole character motivation is that his whole entire family died as a result of them getting screwed over by this con man who slept with his mother, took all of their money, and then that caused his father to come in and pull a murder-suicide. We know that Locke has been screwed over by his father, who also coincidentally is a vicious con man, who was revealed to have stolen his kidney and then was the one that caused his paralysis by knocking him out a window. And in all their infinite genius, And again, we had already kind of had the thread of, okay, we know that the characters who landed on Oceanic Flight 815 have some connections to each other. You know, Jack and Claire being siblings, Jack and Desmond having that run-in with each other beforehand. Now we know because of the last Kate episode that Kate and Colleen knew each other. And Colleen was kind of helping Kate out in order to try and find her mom. We know about what's it called? What other connections are there? Getting about what's it called? There's going to be another connection that's revealed in the next couple of episodes. So we knew about kind of the connections that had happened between the survivors prior to them boarding Oceanic Flight 815. And what this does, this episode, and why it's so brilliant, is this takes that thread, makes it crucial to two characters. It's kind of a next phase in Locke's journey. Now that we've kind of tied up with all the flashbacks and we kind of have this sense of who Locke is fully as a character, we are now being able to okay, setting him up for the next phase of his journey. Because as he tells Sawyer at the end of this episode, after everything has transpired, he's like, I'm on my own journey now, which is kind of like the denouement of everything that Locke's been on, this whole season, where Locke woke up after the hatch implosion, realized he screwed up, realized that he's like, no, this my belief in the island was real. This was just merely another test, and now I have to go and prove myself worthy ultimately. And this is kind of the final phase. You also have, again, another brilliant turn from Ben Linus, the ultimate bad guy of bad guys, and once again showing that he is a Philistine, as Locke called him ultimately. Because the thing about Ben that has constantly been being shown now that we've been spending more time with him this season is that despite all of his posturing and claim about he is, the ultimate evil master, he is the leader of the others, he is the one that has kind of been concocting all of these behind the scenes things, it shows that, is he the man in charge like we all thought, especially after, after Locke receives a file from Richard ultimately. So there's a lot going on in this episode that, that proves why it is one of the best episodes, not only this season, but it might be one of the best episodes of the whole show. But let's start here. So we have basically Hurley and the gang have brought Naomi back to the beach, but they are desperately trying to keep her a secret because rightfully so, they don't trust that they can't tell Jack, because Jack's going to turn around and tell Juliet, and they don't trust that Juliet is not an infiltrator for Ben. And as we, the audience, have discovered in the last couple moments, yeah, Juliet is still kind of an undercover mole for Ben. Or is she? We'll get to that. Sawyer almost accidentally stumbles upon them, doesn't give it any thought, ends up walking into the woods to take a piss, is cornered by Locke. Locke tells him, hey, I didn't go over to the other side like everybody thought. I infiltrated them, and now I've captured Ben. I have him taken captive, and now I need you to come with me to kill him. And look, as audience members, we've already seen enough Lost episodes to know that, okay, absolutely nothing that Locke said is true, and there will definitely be some twists on that as far as what will happen. Now, were we expecting it to go in the directions that we were expecting? No, not at all. But that being said, the other reason as well why this episode works so well is because this kind of pulls another instant. This is also replicating a structure of storytelling and implementing the flashbacks that they used twice in season 2. First with maternity leave with Claire, where they're showing what happened with her when Ethan kidnapped her, and then second with Michael in the 3 minutes episode when it showed what happened when he found the others and was kidnapped by them, which then ended up leading up to the events of him killing Ana Lucia and Libby, and then leading Jack, Hurley, Kate, and Sawyer over to be captured by the others. So, what's it called? So in that sense, we have Locke's flashbacks in this episode are literally just showing him and what he was doing with his time with the others, which then end up leading up to him going and propositioning Sawyer to come with him and kill Ben, as he says. So like I said, already we have a crazy setup to begin with. And like I said, you are probably even more in lock and step with this episode and with this show, I should say, than I was the first time I saw it. So, I mean, immediately you see Locke cornering Sawyer when he's about to take a piss and be like, yeah, I infiltrated the camp, I kidnapped Ben, and I took him captive. And like, what was it? Like 5 seconds in, 10 seconds in, you're like, Locke is lying his ass off. He needs Sawyer, but you don't know what he needs Sawyer for.
Yeah, and then Sawyer can't refuse like an offer like this. He's just too curious at the end of the day, and of course that leads to some like what's it called? Sawyer and Locke are just a great pairing, and like they're opposites, but like many Lost characters, they have more similarities than they realize. So they go on this little journey to the Black Rock, which hadn't been seen.
To the Black Rock.
What since the end of season 1? I think.
Yeah, it's been a minute since we've seen. They may have stumbled upon it in season 2 or early season 3, but yeah, we haven't seen the Black Rock in a minute.
Yeah, so he goes there. I'm thinking, okay, it's clearly not going to be Ben. We're seeing the flashback at the same time. It's going to be his dad. But then, and then the moment finally arrives, like, who the hell are you? Like, why would he know who that even is? But then slowly, he connects the dots. The audience connects the dots that he's that.
And I did
Locke's,
warn you. I did warn you early on that I'm like, there is, like I said, Sawyer being a con man, and then the reveal of Locke's dad being a con man. Like I said, laying the hints here, and like I said, it's just. This is something that only network TV could have done in this specific era, because they could not have done something like this in the 90s or 80s, but they absolutely could not have done something like this in the 2010s or God forbid 2020s, where network TV is all but extinct. Now streaming has officially killed it, where just, again, you have all these seeds, you have all this character backstory, you have all this build to the point where you almost forget it, and then you're at this point and you're like, oh shit. Like, once you see, you're like, wait a minute, Sawyer in a room with Locke's dad, who we know is Anthony Cooper, but we also know that he's a con man. It's like, huh? So Lost, obviously, up until this point, is proven they're like, okay, they have a thing with con men, they have a thing with tests, they have a thing with challenges, with riddles, with games, all of that kind of, intrinsic sort of reveal of a reveal of a reveal is intrinsic to Lost storytelling and structure, like I said. And so once you have these two in a room, you're like, oh, now some shit's about to go down, because it's almost like you as the audience are able to piece it together right before you actually witness it happen. And then once it does, you're like, oh shit. Like, how
did I not figure that out?
How did I not figure this out? That's exactly it.
That's the absolute best kind of twist. Like, when you see it, like, you're not like shocked. You're more like, oh, how did I not see that? And it's not like out of nowhere, because like for Lost, at least for Lost levels, it's like it makes complete sense. Like, I'm more curious, like, when did they plant this? When did they figure out, like, oh, so Locke's dad is going to be the guy who screwed over Sawyer?
The guy. Yeah, he is the epicenter of ultimate evil. Now, real quick, before we get to like the scene itself, once Sawyer realizes why he's been brought here, what did you think of Locke's dad's statement that we're dead, we're
dead? That was like, again, oh, we're doing this again. I guess the audience was still not convinced that everything is happening at this point it's real at this point in the show. So I guess I had to put one more character in there. But what I've seen is that few characters claim that they're dead, but there's more proof than not proof that they are still alive.
True.
Now we have this whole two-plane situation.
Right.
And the island it's in its own bubble, and we'll get to that. So
it is very apt that in the same episode where they have Locke's dad proclaiming very vividly that, like, oh, they're dead, little hot for heaven, isn't it? All I know is 1 minute I'm driving, I get rear-ended into a bumper. Next thing you know, I'm seeing my son, who the last time I saw was dead. And he's like, you mean when you threw him out a window? It's like, no. I knew he survived that. And I don't know, too, it's like, now that he's dropped, now that he supposedly thinks, and this also kind of works great for a character moment, because now that Anthony Cooper thinks that he's dead, he could drop just all pretense of maintaining some, like, any sort of civility, and could just, like, truly thrive in being the absolute asshole, disgusting human being that he is. And Kevin Teague is just, whether Kevin Teague is actually like this in real life or not, I hope he's not. But Kevin Teague, there's a reason why he keeps getting cast in these parts just based off his appearance. I mean, just look at the Christmas Adventurers Club in One Battle After Another as proof of it. It's so all of that is to say that I find it very coincidental and very, very telling that they have probably the worst, most evil character that they've ever invented on the show. And keep in mind, this is a show where we also have Benjamin Linus and Charles Widmore as characters as well, who we don't know that much about Widmore, but just based off of what we've gotten from him, we just automatically know that, like, oh, this guy is not a good guy. How Anthony Cooper takes the cake as far as being the most despicable character on this entire show, not to mention the fact that we have, again, ultimately a con man, a liar, being the one proclaiming that they're dead, that they're in hell, when in the same episode you literally have, like, a pilot from a freighter just off the coast of the island being like, yeah, we're here to rescue you all. So it's very, very telling. Like I said, Lindelof and Cuse know what they are doing in that sense. But it all leads to one of the all-time great reveals where once Sawyer finally puts 2 and 2 together and realizes who he's locked in a room with in the brig, oh man, just like pulls out the letter, makes him read it. Like, so we obviously, it's funny because this episode is posited as a Locke episode, and it is, but at the same time, like, this is also very much like a come full circle moment for Sawyer. Like, Sawyer, the Sawyer that we knew up until this point, the whole just antagonistic, not really giving a crap, only in it for himself, not really like having the heart of gold, but constantly like burying it under all these layers of protection. That's gone. That's all gone because Sawyer has finally, again, the island giveth and the island taketh away. Sawyer has finally been able to confront, the source of all of his pain and misery for the first time ever. And man, he does what exactly what Locke and everybody else expects him to do. Once, Cooper tears up the letter, once Cooper realizes, he's like, oh, did I con you? And of course, he's trying to do the classic con man thing of defending himself. He's like, look, I pulled that con over 200 times. Your mama was basically begging me to take her money. But as soon as he tears up the letter, that's when it's over. Sawyer grabs him, slams his head against the pole, grabs those chains, and strangles him to death. And I don't know, would you say this? I mean, obviously, again, we're only halfway through the show. It feels like we're like reaching a climax of some kind, but like easily the most satisfying kill on the show to this point, right? This is like almost to the level of like Joffrey and Ramsay dying the way that they did in Game of Thrones, but this has to be up there.
Yeah, on one hand, you're like seeing Sawyer on this sort of road to improvement across the island, but like this was like, oh yeah, he had to, he earned that. We earned that.
Yes,
like, that's the culmination of at least this path of his arc. And yeah, just the perfect way to do it is like slow chain choking. So and Locke is waiting in the other room, and then he opens the door, and then they can.
It's like
they can bond.
It's you know what this is? This is a moment that, again, Lindelof was still very, very much experimented with on Lost, that he then perfected on The Leftovers, which, again, I highly recommend for people who have not seen that show. I will actually be doing a retrospective of it with Lucas of the Franchise Addicts podcast next weekend. But it is something that he perfected with The Leftovers, the sense of where he has these characters do this act that is the fulfillment of their arc ultimately. And while nothing is necessarily said afterwards, and while there may still be a couple things that remain unaddressed from the prior to them fulfilling their arc, the amount of the exhale, I guess, that you could allow. It's like after you have just like are finally, I don't quite know how to describe it, but it's essentially when you're almost like undergoing like a meditative trance body experience where you're finally able to just take all of this baggage that you've been carrying around with you and just let it go in a way that feels so relieving yet so exhausting that your body feels physically ill after the fact. That's kind of exactly what happened to Sawyer, where Sawyer, after he's done this, is not even mad that Locke lied to him, that he manipulated him. He's not even mad at that. He's literally just kind of like sick and exhausted with himself, with everything. He doesn't even really know how to feel. And after the fact, Locke just kind of comes up with him and gives him a tape recording and is like, Juliet's a mole working for Ben. And Sawyer's like, I told everybody that already. Nobody believed me. And then Locke gives him the recording. And it's this beautiful, beautiful catharsis moment for both of these characters that have both been through, suffered so much pain ultimately, and have been carrying that pain around and have made that pain a part of their existence. And while it is a relief for Sawyer, it's not for Locke, because we haven't even talked about the flashbacks that ultimately led up to this chain of events, which is Locke's time with the others. So we have all of that to cover, and then also all the stuff that's still happening on the beach with Jack ultimately finding out about Naomi inevitably, and also the revelations with the plane. So the flashbacks, what did you think of those?
Yeah, I do appreciate that we went an episode without the all the way in the past flashbacks. We got a classic. Meanwhile, on the other side of the island, sort of flashback. Yeah. So again, Locke is like sort of integrating himself with the others, but he's not really about their ways. We get to see more of Ben's so-called leadership and how what's the guy's name? Richard, was it?
Richard, yeah.
Like he's not really about too hot about Ben either. So. Excited to see where that exactly goes. Of course, there's the whole sort of humiliation ritual almost, where he has Locke almost kill his dad. Yeah. That's just a sort of a power play from Ben towards the others. So, and yeah, of course, it culminates in the A plot of Locke and Sawyer. So,
Yeah, it's great. And again, the more cons, more tests, more everything, where again, Ben constructs this whole thing as a means to humiliate John, because as Richard says afterwards, he's like, Ben is clearly very, very insecure in his position. And Ben's entire leadership model that he uses to run the others is based entirely on fear and manipulation. And the fact that you are here and you are living proof of somebody who the island has seemingly selected to be the next leader, Ben sees that as a threat. And it doesn't matter what he says, he's going to do everything in his power to make sure that you do not ultimately succeed. And this was ultimately part of it, where he's like, yeah, Ben was right about, if you want to be one of us, one of the others, you have to ultimately provide a physical gesture to prove it. But you don't have to do it the way that he's making it seem. Like, you don't have to do this big, like, sacrificial, him, you killing your own father in front of everybody else ultimately. And so that's kind of what leads him to, once Richard gives Locke Sawyer's file and he reads through it, he's like, how the hell would Sawyer know anything about my dad? He's like, keep reading. And then we're left to kind of put the 2 and 2 together. Like I said, Richard, we still don't know a lot about Richard. This is our first instance, like I said, where even though we've been familiar and are aware of the others, we still don't know that much about Richard. He's a very, very mysterious character who we will spend more time with as time goes on, ultimately. But the other thing, too, also about these flashbacks that's so unique is there's a reason why this episode and next episode are very much a two-hander between Locke and Ben, because this episode, we got to see what was happening with Locke when he was spending all that time with the others over the course of the last couple of weeks. The next episode, we get Ben's flashback and Ben's origin story and kind of why Ben is the way that he is. It's very, very interesting. I'm going to save that for next week, though, when we hit Man Behind the Curtain. But like I said, it's all foretelling that Locke and Ben's dynamic is probably one of the most interesting across the course of the entire show. There's a reason why Michael Emerson, who was only initially cast to be in 3 episodes in season 2, ended up becoming a series regular for the rest of the show. It's a brilliant performance, one of the best performances, I think, not only just of this show, but quite possibly in TV history. The way that he is able to take probably like the slimiest, wormiest, most manipulative. I almost think of Ben as being the live action interpretation of that weasel character from that show Recess. I don't know if you ever watched that show, but there was this late 90s Disney show.
I'm aware of it, but it was not on my radar.
I can't remember the character's name, but it's like there's the one tattletale character that would just always go and like tell the teacher everything that the kids were doing in recess, to the point where they literally just like wrote him off as like being like a constant like subtle manipulator betrayer character. I think they modeled him after the David Patrick Kelly, who was a very iconic 80s character actor who was known for playing those types of characters across all different sorts of movies, 48 Hours, Commando, and such. And so I feel like Ben is kind of the next in a long line of those kinds of characters. And it's really
funny how you mentioned that he was only supposed to be in what 3 episodes of
something like
2?
that. Yeah.
And it seems to happen a lot with TV. Like Jesse Pinkman was supposed to be killed off.
Chris Pratt, Parks and Rec.
Yeah, Steve Harrington was meant to be killed off in season 1. And now you can't imagine those shows without those characters. And I think that's what makes TV such a unique and interesting medium.
I want to say as well that Justin Chatwin was also supposed to only be around for season 1 of Shameless, but I could be wrong there.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Stranger Things now, and people are saying, "Oh, it's not like it was in season 1." I'm like, it's a TV show. Like, you kind of have an idea for an ending, but you have to make things up as you go, because you don't know how many seasons you're gonna get.
It's true
with TV, especially like in like the 2000s, where it's like order by season, like Lost. Okay, first episode, you know how the show is gonna end. They're gonna get off the island, but it's like, how much can we explore, sort of thing. And of course, this episode brings back the purgatory theory.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking that's just far too easy. I'd rather have like a convoluted way of what the island is and how they're going to get off it than just like, oh, they were dead the whole time.
Yeah, they're dead the whole time. It's too easy. And the fact that Lindelof brought that motif and theme back as often as he did shows that, like, oh no, he is very deliberately trying to use that kind of idea as a red herring in order to distract ultimately. And it shows because the people, the audience members who believe in that theory, you can tell, like, oh, you guys were never really paying attention ultimately. And it's just, I don't know, that's just one of those things where, like, me as a pretentious person who, a goatee stroking college professor who loves to pride himself as being above everybody else, and just be like, aha, but you were not paying attention the whole time. Really.
Yes, above the so-called general audience.
Exactly, above the normies, as we like to say. But So we're like I said, so we're gonna leave all the rest of that stuff up until next week's episode, because next week, and like I said, the man behind the curtain, when we get Ben's flashback, that's gonna be a very, very important episode. But let's go back to the beach real quick and just cover, like I said, it's the C plot that is building us up towards the finale. Like I said, they're keeping Naomi hidden from Jack, rightfully so. That lasts for all about 5 seconds because they bring in Sayid. Sayid starts to interrogate Naomi. Naomi easily passes like Saeed's kind of like test in order to pass, because Saeed's like, wait a minute, if you were looking for us, why? Because if you found the remains of Oceanic Flight 815, then how did you find us? She's like, I wasn't looking for you, I was looking for him, and points to Desmond. And he's like, okay. So she sort of passes Saeed's test and then pulls out the satellite phone, which the satellite phone, of course, surprise, surprise, is not working. If we go all the way back to season 1, we remember what happened there. But Saeed's trying to fix it. Kate ends up stumbling upon them. Saeed's forced to tell her. Kate, inevitably, shocker, goes to Jack. Kate is once again proving to be the worst character on the show as time is going on. Not her fault, unfortunately, because of how she was initially conceived in the pilot versus how she ended up being kind of utilized throughout the rest of the show. But she ends up, of course, going to Jack. And then Jack is like to Juliet, oh, tell her, because she's like, yeah, nobody trusts you, Jack, because we know that you're just going to turn around and tell Juliet. And then Jack is like, tell her. And Kate's like, tell her what? Cut to credits.
I haven't loved Jack in the second half of the season. He hasn't been as proactive as he has previously. So now he's just like, I like Juliet, I trust her, everything is fine. So, and I'm not gonna be too involved with the beach plot. So
I think that what happened with the second half of Jack's arc in season 3, especially after the negative reception to Stranger in a Strange Land, is they were like, okay, look, Jack's our main character. We have an idea for him going forward. We're gonna have him take a backseat for the rest of the season and focus on the other characters. Rightfully so, I think, because it's to the show's strength ultimately that they were finally able to focus on and give a lot of the other side characters a lot of nuance that maybe they were kind of lacking initially in the first couple of seasons. So I like that ultimately they did that, and I like that even if again it's at Jack's behest, ultimately there is a reveal that's also going to come in next episode that shows it like, oh, okay, so was Juliet a triple agent, a quadruple agent? Who knows? But yeah,
she's like Ray Winstone in Crystal Skull.
Yes,
like,
literally. That's the best comparison that I could possibly think of for Juliet in this era, in this arc of Lost. But yeah, like I said, the Brig, one of the best episodes of this season, possibly one of the best episodes of the whole show. I'm gonna have a lot of fun where once we're done with Lost next year, when we go through and we have to do a top 20 favorite episodes for this. It's gonna be tough too, going back and like
that's gonna be tough, but I'm sure I'll manage.
Because it's like we've already gone through like 50 plus episodes of this whole show, which in the streaming era is like the equivalent of like an entire show, not even just an entire season. And we're only halfway through the entirety of the show's run. Oh man, but like I said, we're gonna have a lot to talk about. Tune in next week for the man behind the curtain. But going into our next TV recap of the week, Pluribus, episode 6, entitled HDP, and oh man, oh baby, oh man, oh man, oh man, oh man. I mean, so after last week's episode, right, where you obviously again had another massive cliffhanger set up where you see Carol stumbling upon the those bags full of decomposed substance, and then you see the kind of the liquid substance that's being formed for sustenance for them. And then we get the reveal, and of course the hive mind reveals it in a way that only they can, in the form of John Cena doing basically the equivalent of a commercial, which I'm like, oh wow, like that shows like Gilligan is just operating at the peak of his power. They could just get John Cena to show up for like and essentially film a commercial essentially, and then just have him disappear. And yeah, so basically you have the big reveal after last week, which is that the hive mind is essentially taking the corpses of all the people who initially died during their takeover and converting them into this sustenance that they need to survive, as they are in, and essentially, ergo, how that's translated is that the hive mind have essentially found a loophole in their own logic, in the sense of where, while they are incapable of lying and of taking life in and of themselves, what they can do is they can take life that has already died through absolutely no means of through absolutely no means of their own control, and essentially convert that into sustenance that they can continue to survive. So what did you think of that big reveal in this week?
Yeah, again, it's sort of weakening them as a villain, which I think you need. If you have a villain that can, I guess, villains like more of an antagonist, I
Yeah.
guess, in this situation. If you have an antagonist that's just immortal and can not be hurt in any way, that's pretty boring. So there's another interesting turn, another obstacle or opportunity for Carol to maneuver. We get her linked up with Mr. Diabate again, which was a
Yes.
lot of fun. He's doing
Very,
like a
very
whole
entertaining.
Casino Royale
I love it.
recreation,
And
which
how
is
the fact that how he's having the hive mind purposely like act out the parts, which I thought was great.
it's like why the hell not? Like just take like 10 minutes of the whole episode to play out that like I guess with the Apple budget you can.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, again, it's like with Lost. I get one answer and I get three more questions. So I'm just excited to see where it goes. It's like they imply that everyone's gonna starve in 3 years anyway. So what are they gonna do about that? What is the end game? So again, just gotta keep watching.
Yeah. Literally just keep watching. And that's kind of exactly what happens here. And I very, very much enjoy, again, the fact that they are still giving us only a morsel of information each week, despite the massive gangbusters reveals, while also continuing to have like a lot of fun, continuing to kind of show off the filmmaking prowess again, continuing with more of the. We got to come up with a name for the shots and sequences where we see all of the hive mind moving in unison. We have to come up with a name for that because it's just like the synchronized the synchronization of all the background extras. It's too good, and I'm gonna keep talking about it every week. And I know that that's gonna become like a trope of the show that people look for, being like, there's the synchronization, there's all that. So we got to come up and figure out a name for that. But in addition to that, like I said, I like the reveal, but I like how this is essentially finally Carol, who up until this point has kind of been portrayed as very much in a way like her own antagonist. And it like this was one of the instances where again Gilligan has become quite good at this in the past of making the main character ultimately the antagonist to the world, where it's a flip on the audience expectations, where we are following this character as their lead and we enjoy watching them so much because we've been told, oh, they're the character, they're the main guy, they're the ones that we're supposed to be rooting for. And then at the end he always pulls the switch, pulls the flip, the switcheroo, if you will, being like, no, this character is not somebody who you're supposed to be rooting for. You're not supposed to be rooting for Walter White doing all these heinous things. You're supposed to root for Saul Goodman finally going to jail and answering for all of the crimes that he's committed in the past. History of slights against you does not make up for present of screwing everybody over and trying to, put all those slights onto the rest of the world. That ultimately does not work. And what I like about this is finally, as Gilligan said in that one award speech that he was trying to give, where he's like, look, we spent an entire 2 decades now having people root for bad guys. Let's try and root for some good guys now for once. And I like that he is once again, in all of his brilliance, pulled the switch and be like, oh, I have literally created an antagonist that is essentially better than humanity in any way, in almost every single way, shape, or form, to the point where any argument against their so-called perceived beautiful utopia that they've created can be easily debunked. And now I'm finally showing the cracks ultimately, not just at how their whole idea of making the world into this utopia is ultimately a fool's errand because it comes at the death of individuality and identity. But also, I'm now showing that, their whole squeaky clean method of how they enacted said utopia is also not at all how they initially perceived it, where their means of sustenance is through a form of necrophilia, if you will. I can't quite come up with another term as of right now to describe it, while also, again, tying into as well a plot line that they set up in like the second episode, which again, how would you have known to look for other than just like, if you remember the seeds that they were laying, you had to be paying attention ultimately, where it shows it like, we also know that despite the fact that, Carol and the other survivors, the unbrainwashed, if you will, their lives are their own, but at the same time, they also show that, like, we are trying to subjugate you and make you one of us ultimately. And now we may have a means of how they're going to do it, because they did recently make a discovery that, like, it's through stem cells. That's how we can do it. That's how we can initiate this takeover. So all we need is a sample of your very specific stem cells,
but they can't do it without her consent.
Which she did voice her consent, but there was one other tidbit that was not revealed in this episode necessarily, but it may be that, like, okay, just because she specifically vocalized her consent that she did not want them to take her stem cells from her body, that doesn't mean that she doesn't have other cells in another place elsewhere. You know, because if you remember back to the cold open, very much pun intended, of episode 3, when her and Helen are in that igloo, who was it that donated eggs, that had their eggs frozen?
I'm guessing it was her, but I forgot. I guess you gotta pay super attention to everything.
Pay attention. And that, and also film Twitter is a beautiful thing, because of course film Twitter, you have like AI bots or whoever going and combing over like multitudes of like different sections of each episode and reposting them and such. Like, you know that there's like an entire team dedicated to doing that now, as far as these shows go, because that's just part of how we consume the content. But I just saw that and I was like, oh shit. Either way, it's setting us up for a baller final 3 episodes, as if this entire season hasn't been baller already. Like, this is already, like I said, you knew that the show was going to be good when after the first 2 episodes you were like, oh, this is already one of the best shows of the year. And it is simultaneously like pulled back, but also continue to reveal itself after that explosive premiere. And oh man, I'm shaken. I'm absolutely shaken after this episode, especially with the final reveal of Manusos, the immune individual living in Paraguay, who is isolated and cut himself off from the rest of the hive mind, despite them continuing to bring him food every day, has received Carol's message, and after receiving it, finally has the impetus that he needs to go and make the trek in his car all the way from Paraguay all the way up to New Mexico, which I saw another thing on Twitter where it shows that like the exact route of where it's like, it is drivable, but man, this dude is really about to make like the longest drive imaginable. How long is it going to take him to drive all the way from Paraguay, which is like south center of South America, all the way up to New Mexico? That's like got to be like at least like 2 weeks of driving nonstop, at least.
Yeah, but with the power of TV, he could be there at the beginning of the next episode. So
that's true. Well, I think the next episode more than likely is going to show like the, his actual journey there. And I wouldn't be surprised if next episode is focused on him. And then it'll end that episode with him like finally reaching Carol. And then 8 and 9 will be Carol and Manusos trying to figure out like how they're going to stop the hive mind. And that's going to inevitably.
That could be kind of like a the Fly type episode where maybe not like a whole lot of plot happens, but it's just like kind of a bottle episode, which is just following the one guy across the journey. So if that is true, shout out to you. You called that, but I trust Vince probably more than any showrunner at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, HTB. Oh man, we are just getting started. Only 3 episodes left. Next, and it tells because next week's episode is called The Gap. Very, very rightfully so. I'm brought back to my days when I was in London as a youth. The thing of whenever you get on the tube and they always say "mind the gap" every time you.
They
get
say
on.
that a lot.
Oh, they do.
Mind the gap.
Oh, the amount of times that like it like became a running joke between me and my family, like when we were young in London. But so I'm actually gonna do something that I have not done in a minute, which is where, for this last section where we talk about all of the news that has dropped in the last couple of weeks.
Are you bringing up an article or something?
No, well, not quite. I'm taking away all the vistage, all of the pomp, all the circumstance, all the graphics, because Luke, there was some earth-shattering, industry-shattering news that was dropped this past, I don't remember when the news was dropped, but it was this past week. I want to say it might have been on Tuesday night, because I remember I actually took the day off from work. I was sick. I was home recovering.
The announcement made you that sick?
No, this was after I was starting to get better. And then that announcement happened, and I'm just, okay, it's over. It's done. Now, I do still have some hope, because they are saying now that, like, okay, just because the announcement has been made, this is just the beginning. This does. I don't know,
Don. They sent me an email that was like, "Hey, we're bringing HBO." They sent
you an email?
Yeah, they sent me an email. Oh, I can read it out.
For anybody who has no idea what we're talking about, if you live under a rock, on Tuesday it was announced. So, but prior to that, it has been announced that Warner Brothers Discovery has been up for sale. There were 3 major bidders: Paramount, Netflix, and Comcast Universal. Very, very much so. Warner Brothers did not want a Paramount acquisition, despite the fact that Paramount was angling very, very heavily to get them. We all know that the new owners of Paramount, the Skydance Corporation, which is run by parent and son Larry and David Ellison, who are both very, very close with the current president of the United States, Donald Trump. So basically, we kind of all knew what a Paramount acquisition of Warner Brothers would have meant. And on Tuesday night, it was announced that Netflix had officially won the bidding merger and was about to enter into negotiation talks with Warner Brothers in order to finalize their acquisition. So I mean, all sorts of doom and gloom, all sorts of naysaying, all sorts of like, but I'm glad that we're covering this now, because now that like kind of the immediate reaction of, oh no, the industry is over with. Now that we can actually like have the rational discussion, what are your thoughts on Netflix supposedly winning the merger of Warner Brothers?
There's a lot of ways this could go. Obviously, there's one way that it just doesn't go at all. That's one possibility. The other is that we're watching the Batman Part 2 on our freaking laptops on the day it releases. That's probably the most dire option that I can think of as a consumer. But yeah, it was kind of like this Warner Brothers sales, like it's like floating about in the air. It's like, okay, it's probably gonna happen at some point, and then like it's kind of like quickly ramped up. Like, oh, Paramount's in the Netflix is in it. Oh, Netflix has bought it. Boom, Netflix announced it on their own socials. Like, whoa, they're really like trying to rush this so that no one asks too many questions, and it just like people get on board with it. I'm guessing a lot of people would get on board with it. It's like, oh, two streaming services in one. Like that makes life simpler for some. Of course, they're going to raise the price, but I guess we're probably not going to see anything really happen for like 2 years at least, if it does go through. So yeah.
Yeah, I am, now that I've kind of like gotten my initial immediate emotional reaction out of the way, and I can sit back and think about this logically a little bit. There are a couple of things that come to mind. One, the fact that this is not anything new, because basically back in 2020, 2021, at the time head of Warner Brothers, before when it was still owned by AT&T, before they went over to Discovery, Jason Kilar, who was kind of the guy who came up with the idea initially of the infamous day and date drop. When we had an entire year in 2021 where all of Warner Brothers' entire slate opened simultaneously in theaters and at home on HBO Max. Kilar famously said at that time, was quoted saying, one of the easiest ways to reduce competition in the industry would be for Netflix to buy Warner Brothers. I may be paraphrasing that a little bit, but that's something that was said at that time. That's the first thing. The second thing, obviously, is really this whole idea of Warner Brothers. People have been theorizing that David Zaslav, who took over Warner Brothers after their merger with Discovery, had been basically setting Warner Brothers up for a sale just based off of all the decisions that he had been making since he took over the company in late 2022, and how despite Warner possibly having their best financial year so far post-COVID with, again, all the, Minecraft, Sinners, Weapons, One Battle After Another, which again lost money but still is set to be a major awards player. The Conjuring, which made a ton of money. The news cycle kind of around their releases was really weird, because they would briefly talk about all of the successes that they had, Minecraft still being one of the highest grossing movies of the year, but then they would just talk about how much money Superman lost for the studio. And I'm like, but why are we focusing on that and not the inevitable, the massive amount of success that they've had? How, again, Warner actually, specifically their film studio under Mike DeLuca and Pam Abdi, put their faith into filmmakers like Ryan Coogler, like Paul Thomas Anderson, like Zach Krieger, and gave them, actual budgets to make and what resulted in arguably 3 of the best movies of the year, some of the best and some of the most profitable movies of the year. Because again, if I'm just going to be that guy, since this apparently seems to be all that people want to be focusing on, Sinners, right? Once my computer loads. Okay, so Sinners, budget of 90 to 100 million, 367 million. Weapons.
Couldn't have been that expensive.
Weapons, budget of 38 million, 268 million. And One Battle After Another, 150 million. I think it's barely cracked 200 million, but that will continue to make money, because
that's an awards movie.
Right, exactly.
You got to take the
movie.
hit on that one.
Yeah. So I do find it weird where, again, it has become kind of part of the conversation as to where fans ultimately are having the box office discussion, because the ones who have been doing this as long as we have understand now that box office is key and crucial in order to continuing to get the movies that we like, and also continuing to get movies in theaters, which again is part of the other reason why people are so scared about the Netflix takeover, because at the end of the day, theaters are still the one way in order to kind of, despite theaters having essentially become, like, for lack of a better term, bougie, because of how expensive they are, because of how inconvenient it is for most people to go out, and because of how kind of the lack of overall quality and substantive filmmaking and kind of all the things that have persisted in the post-COVID era, theaters already have a lot going against them. But kind of they, with the inherent quality finally seeming to finally be on the rise this year in terms of theatrically released movies, what kind of makes this the most frightening is not even just anything having to do with box office or movies going forward. It has to do with the fact that every movie that gets dumped on Netflix, I'm just talking about Netflix specifically, not any other streaming service, that goes straight to Netflix, it may be watched by a few people, but ultimately it's just part of their content mill. Netflix ultimately, and why they have done more harm to the industry than anybody else, is because Netflix does not view films as art. They don't. They view it as content. They view it as background noise. They view it as, oh, despite all of their proclaiming to love the art of film and that they're just adapting with the times because nobody wants to go to the theater anymore because the theatrical model is outdated, whatever. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they are a tech company. They are an algorithm driven. All they are concerned about is how do they max out on subscribers so that they continue to raise their stakes with their shareholders. They do not ultimately care about quality and about what it is that we love about film. That's kind of ultimately where my personal worry came from. Now, as far as what's going to happen going forward, whether this deal even goes through, obviously, again, Netflix is trying to already start to get people ready, be like, oh, get ready to, access the entire of the Warner Brothers library on their service. Whether that actually gets through, because again, we know that even though antitrust laws basically don't exist anymore in the conventional sense, we do know that Trump is one petty motherfucker. We know that the Ellisons are very close friends with him, and we know that Trump will go out of his way to block a media merger deal if he doesn't like it, because that is the reason why the Disney Fox merger took as long as it did to go through, and why you still got Dark Phoenix and New Mutants released in theaters, because Trump was trying to block that deal for as long as he could, even after it had gone through. And that deal still eventually went through, but now, I don't know. Like I said, I did a lot of posturing there. I did a lot of rambling. So what are your thoughts to kind of just everything that I just said?
Yeah, I think you hit every nail on every head with every point. So again, you're more knowledgeable in the overall industry than I am. But as a avid consumer of stuff, I still follow the main stuff. And I always think of like the different streaming services and their sort of hierarchy. Disney's the family friendly one. They have all their the Marvel stuff, the Star Wars stuff, the Disney stuff, that sort of thing. Apple is the one where they don't have that much, but what they have is like really well produced and well thought out. HBO Max, that's the big Warner Brothers back catalog, and there's HBO, so there's a lot of good stuff on there. And Netflix is the one where they just churn out crap for the sake of churning it out, and people do watch it. Like you check the top tens TV shows, like anything that's new, it's up there. Like no matter how middling it might be. So again, it is worrying. Like you said, they think of it as content. They don't think of it as art. They just, okay, we need to keep pumping the algorithm, just so that the rotation is there. People stay subscribed, and that now they have. If it goes through, they suddenly have all this existing IP, because as like Netflix, they have their IP they came up with. The Stranger Things about to end. Squid Game ended. Wednesday's taking off, but now they get freaking A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
Like how many spin-offs of that would we get if it goes through?
Yeah, that's the other thing. I do find it very convenient how in the same year where it feels like all of their major like kind of event shows that were kind of the last bastions, I guess, that you could say that got people to tune in. Stranger Things is ending. Cobra Kai ended. Sandman was canceled. Wednesday, I don't know how many more seasons that's getting because that just started. You ended this year. Like all of kind of their major like Netflix originals that people actually gave a shit about are ending or have already ended. So I do find it very curious how this happened right then. Again, it's one of those like weird coincidences that may or may not be pre-planned or not, because it just feels where it may not, it probably isn't, but it feels just a little bit too well timed for it to be like, really? Really, y'all didn't time this? This is a weird coincidence. This is all happening around the same time frame. So, yeah, that's just one of those things where I'm just like, all right, like what's going on here? So, yeah, It's a very, very curious day in the industry. On top of the fact that you also have every single possible tease that they could be doing for Avengers Doomsday. They're like, oh, they're going to leak the trailer early. They're going to leak the trailer early. They're going to do this.
We're
going to
getting a Supergirl trailer.
Yeah, we have a Supergirl trailer. We have the Spielberg trailer. We have all these
trailers.
trailers.
Odyssey trailer.
I'm like, guys, wait for Avatar. It's all going to be released then. And that really
I think the trailer is going to be better than the movie because
probably
have like four new trailers.
Are you kidding me? Fuck the blue people. As it is, Cameron isn't even sure if he's gonna finish this series out with 4 and 5. I'm going for those trailers. That's what I'm going for.
If we do get the 5-minute Odyssey preview, I'm like, okay, I'm good. Now the movie can be whatever. I saw what I wanted to see. So go make the Devils. That's more
literally, especially since apparently he's not doing Ghost of Hiroshima. He was just doing that to help promote the book, which I'm like, you know what? Good on Cameron. And I do want to say as well that literally a week before this announcement happened, Cameron did say on his interview with Matt Bellany's podcast, The Town, that Netflix acquiring Warner Brothers would be an absolute disaster. It would be the worst thing for the industry. And if there is one person who I trust to actually speak honestly and candidly with no BS about the industry, it is Big Jim Cameron. If there's one person I trust.
He has maybe one of the biggest egos in Hollywood, but he can back it up because he's made like 3 of the 5 most highest grossing movies of all time. So like, you go ahead, man.
Yeah.
So I guess now that one of the big players of the movie world, Netflix, has done this, we're now relying on Disney of all things to bring back the theatrical experience with Avatar and then 2 Avengers movies.
We just have to think about this for a second. The fact that literally in the course of one night, one decision in Hollywood caused us to root for not only Disney but also Trump. Because I'm like, man, literally, and I am not kidding you one bit when I say, I was talking with my friend James, who's been on this podcast, and my friend James literally said, if Trump blocks the deal, I will vote for him in 28. So I can't think of a better place. I can't think of a better place to leave the podcast than with that statement.
Well, he is getting involved in movies. He wants Rush Hour 4.
He wants Rush Hour 4.
He gets Rush Hour 4.
He single-handedly is getting the Ellisons to make Rush Hour 4, which I'm like, how? Jackie Chan is 70 plus years old and Chris Tucker is barely in movies now. Like, how are you going to make this happen? But you know what? If there's one thing I've learned, it's that when Trump wants something, he gets it ultimately at the end of the day. But, oh man, I can't think of a better place to wrap this podcast. This is like our longest podcast yet that we've done just based on Lost, but I can't wait. We still have 3 weeks left in order to cover it for 3 all-time stretch for Lost. One of the crazy movie news is going to drop. Avatar weekend, Marty Supreme weekend, wrap it up. And
we don't get Marty Supreme. I'm very pissed about that.
Oh man. I'll see if I can find you a screener. But man, yeah, Dustin and I are going to be seeing that and reviewing that the Saturday after Avatar comes out. So we're gonna make a big day out of it. We're gonna go and we're gonna see it. But yeah, it's oh man. Just when you thought the year was gonna be it's gonna be a calm, quiet wrap up weekend.
We can get one big movie and just ease out the year, but no.
Yep. Yeah. Anyways, where can the good people follow you on the interwebs, Luke?
They can follow me at Luke Reviews on YouTube. No Welcome to Dairy rant this week because we're doing it on Sunday and the episode hasn't come out yet. But this is supposed to be the good one. The part that's actually from the book. Big surprise.
We shall see. I'm seeing Kill Bill, the whole bloody affair tonight. So starting at 7 p.m., I will be in a movie theater for 4 straight hours, just watching absolute Tarantino gloriousness, and I'm very, very, very excited about that.
Tarantino can make movies. That's about all he can do.
Yeah, like, pretty much. As we've learned.
Stay quiet.
Yeah, as we've learned ultimately. Oh man. You guys can follow me with everything going on at Movie Nerd Reviews across all platforms, at Official Talkin TV Podcast across all platforms. Also, if you are listening to this on Spotify, be sure to stay tuned for my interview with Christian Snell and Kristen Kopp of the movie Violent Ends. My interview with them is happening immediately after this. I had a lot of fun talking with those two. Violent Ends, pretty small indie movie that went direct to VOD, but it is very, very good. I highly, highly recommend it. Had an absolute blast with it. But in the meantime, 12 seasons in a short film, and get lost. We'll see you guys next week.